Training aerobically can reduce the chances of getting COPD. This is a condition called chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. It makes it hard to exhale air out of your lungs, all of the air. This is because there's not as much space in the airway because it is being blocked. Therefore, aerobic training is important because it helps to free up that airway so there's more space for air to flow out. It is caused by obesity, smoking, genetics, and a lack of aerobic exercise. This is because aerobic exercise strengthens the heart and lungs and improves and helps us to use oxygen, and therefore over a period of time it will decrease heart rate and blood pressure. Tidal volume can increase dramatically. It can go from 1 litre in the average adult for 2 litres for an elite athlete like my striker. Ventilation equals breathing rate times tidal volume. Therefore, if tidal volume increases, so does breathing rate and ventilation. If ventilation increases, so does tidal volume or breathing rate. This means that more air can be taken in, so performance will improve because we can breathe in more air and work for longer. Vital capacity can increase, which allows for deeper and more oxygen-rich breaths. Residual volume can also increase. Trained athletes' minute ventilation can also increase by 50% to 150 litres per minute. Respiratory muscles. Training will result in more strength in the respiratory muscles, which means the lungs can take in more air per breath and get rid of more air per breath. This means that respiration improves because there are deeper breaths. So my striker will perform better because he'll be able to take in more oxygen and get more to the muscles so that he can work for longer. Aerobic exercise his main concern is to make adaptations in the respiratory system. Some new research has shown that a device called Power Breathe can train the inspiratory muscles of the respiratory system. It uses resistance training thoughts to train these muscles, such as the diaphragm and external intercostal muscles, which helps a person take in more air during inspiration. My performer will fatigue less because, like I said, you can get more air to the muscles and work for longer. Gaseous exchange. There's capillarization of the working skeletal muscles, which means more oxygen goes to the working muscles and there is waste products are moved or removed faster. This is because there's a higher or more capillary density, and therefore my performer can work at a larger intensity and for longer, which will improve performance. As you can see in the bottom right image, post-training VO2 max is much higher than pre-training. This is because this means that the post-training will mean that the person can breathe in a lot more air and get a lot more oxygen to the muscles, which is a benefit. A trained performer will have a smaller oxygen deficit and EPOC because you will need to borrow less oxygen as your recovery will be less because you're fitter, you're aerobically fitter, and your muscles don't need as much oxygen to replenish them. For example, an unfit person would need a lot more oxygen to their muscles after exercise and a lot higher EPOC. This is a sign that you're starting to get fitter and aerobically fitter because the recovery phase decreases, which means EPOC, which is excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, will decrease because you'll have less oxygen debt. Also, EPOC and oxygen debt will be smaller because you need your adrenaline and noradrenaline are increased to increase oxygen consumption, so that it goes to the muscle to replace the oxygen the body needed but couldn't get, which is the oxygen deficit. This is because adrenaline, noradrenaline enhance cardiac output by increasing heart rate, vasodilation in targeted blood vessels, and putting blood pressure up. In strength and endurance training, these direct blood flow into the tissues which are being used or exercised. Long-term exercise like aerobic exercise will make this system more efficient and means that the body can secrete more into the bloodstream. There is also a lower resting breathing rate in submaximal exercise because you don't need more oxygen to your muscles and get rid of more carbon dioxide because they're more efficient the fitter you are. Therefore, obviously a trained person will need less oxygen to their muscles. Therefore, breathing rate will decrease. When we train anaerobically, doing sprinting and also resistance training, it means that our heart can adapt, which means that the wall of our heart can get stronger, which is hypertrophy, and also thicker. Hypertrophy is where there's an increase in muscle size from training with greater resistance. The cross-sectional size of the existing muscle tissue increase because there's more myofibrils and connective tissue. This is essentially tendons and ligaments. These then become more pliable. This means the contraction is larger, so there's a higher stroke volume and a lower heart rate. This adaptation will speed recovery up because there will be faster waste removal. Performance will then improve because of my striker, because he'll be able to compete at a high intensity for longer. The athlete can get more oxygen into the mitochondria, which means that we won't fatigue as easily because my striker will be able to run for longer and at the same intensity for longer. As you can see in the top right image, it's showing my blood lactate profile.